Welcome to the Work Hard, Play Hard podcast. My name is Rob Murgatroyd, and I'm a former doctor turned lifestyle entrepreneur. Each week, I interview some of the best minds on the planet on the science of achievement and the art of fulfillment. Come take this journey with me. Excuses are over. It's time to live.
How you're going to get there is by taking a lot of swings and being committed and just doing it. And then you realize as you're doing it, you're like, wow, I need to stop trading hours for dollars. How do I grow from there and go into that? But it's you don't just step right into it. Give it 3 years of not stopping. Don't quit after a year or 6 months and call that commitment. It took us 3 years of really not seeing any meaningful results before we were able to kind of turn the corner, if you will. Culture is how decisions get made. What are our values? The leader of the organization who exhibits those and gets out of the way, man, watch out. That organization is going places.
All right, before we jump into this episode, I want to invite you to be considered for my Work Hard, Play Hard Mastermind by completing an application at workhardplayhardmastermind.com. So this mastermind is not like any mastermind you may have been to or heard of, I promise you. This mastermind is for 6 to 7 figure entrepreneurs that are working too damn much and aren't taking the time to have amazing experiences around the world with an incredible tribe of people. So every 100 days or so, I drop you into new experiences that are specifically designed to elevate your thinking, to give you new ideas. Look, you get your best ideas not staring at a computer. And actually, this is the way high-level people really collaborate with each other. They do it over a glass of champagne, watching the sunset in the south of France. And we'll be doing things just like that. In fact, we'll be taking a vintage car ride through the French Riviera this summer, and we'll be truffle hunting in Florence in the fall, to name just a few of the experiences so that I can give you a feel for it. So if you are ready to do some fun stuff around the world and really, really want to level up your tribe in one shot, fill out an application at workhardplayhardmastermind.com. We'll jump on a call and we'll see if it's a good fit. All right, let's jump into today's episode. What's up, everybody? This is Rob Murgatroyd, and welcome to another episode of the Work Hard, Play Hard show. This episode features Evan Tardy. You can find him on Instagram and elsewhere at Evan Tardy. So I wanted to have Evan on the show because I know that there are a ton of people listening that want to learn how to scale their business, how to make a bunch of money, how to enjoy their life. And Evan really has done all of those things remarkably well. He is the brains behind the marketing of draxe.com. And he's turned that brand from an idea that they had at their kitchen table. He was in Dr. Axe's house and they were sitting at the kitchen table and coming up with brainstorming some ideas on how to grow his brand. And that brand has now scaled to $50 million. So we talk about a bunch of stuff. We talk about the psychology that it took to get there. We talk about some specific tactical applications on how to use Facebook ads. And we also talked about how having this new influx of money has affected his current life. So be sure to take a screenshot of this episode, share it on the socials, and remember to tag me and at Evan Tardy and let us know what you thought of the show. So without further ado, please enjoy this conversation I had with Evan Tardy. Evan, welcome to the show.
Thanks. Glad to be here.
You know what? I am super excited to do this interview with you. So thank you so much for taking the time. We have a mutual friend in Chris Harder. He said, you got to interview Evan. And if he tells me to jump off a building, I jump off a building. So here we are.
Chris is great. Yeah, we had a blast. I did his podcast maybe about 1.5 years, 2 years ago. And that guy's sharp.
He is as sharp as a tack, let me tell you. And we've had a couple of glasses of tequila, and he gets sharper. So he's I don't know what it is. I always feel like an idiot every time I'm around him, but he's a wonderful guy. We spent the summer in Greece this past year and had an awesome time. So thank you for being here. I think what we'll do is we'll kind of break it down into three parts. So the first part, we're going to talk about the science of achievement and sort of like how you've been instrumental in creating a company that's doing $50 million in revenue. I think that's important. And then we're going to move into the art of fulfillment and maybe some things that you do that's on the flip side of business and how you feel more fulfilled. And then we will wrap up with some rapid fire questions. Cool?
That sounds great. I love all of that stuff.
Awesome. So let's kind of start at the beginning. Can you tell us where you grew up and maybe describe a few things that your parents did with you, say, from ages 10 to 15?
Yeah. So I grew up in West Texas, a town called Lubbock, right in the panhandle of Texas. A lot of people don't know where that is. And so how I describe, like, to give them some like, geographical kind of markers. I'm like, have you ever heard of Dallas, Texas? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, all right.
You gotta start with, have you heard of America?
Have you heard of America?
All right.
Have you heard of Texas? Okay. Dallas. I'm like, yeah, we're
Big hats.
Big hats. That is the nearest town, and that is a 6-hour drive. So, like, we're like way out there. And my dad is someone that I just like credit so much of who I am and like my success and just everything from like who he was and what he instilled in me. And my dad is kind of like famous around our household for all these little like quips and phrases. And one that like I think was super informative and instructive and like still is with me to this day is he would say, like, anytime we said the word can't, he would kind of like catch us and he'd be like, hey, can't means you don't want to or you don't know how. And it was just like this, it's like he kind of started teaching me early on to be really conscious of my language, even though I wasn't aware that that's what was happening.
What did you think that you were going to be when you were in high school?
I remember my freshman year of high school sitting next to one of my closest friends at the time and just sitting there dreaming with him in the back of English class. And I'm like, bro, you and I are going to be millionaires by the time we're 30. We're going to own a real estate empire. He's like, yeah.
You're like, you're damn right we are.
Damn right. And so, when I was 16, I started my first business. It was a mobile car wash. And, I think I shared this with Chris, but so I had this like old school, like beater Cadillac, it was like 30 years old. And, that was the car I was driving. And, in West Texas, it's like, it's not as common. I live in Nashville now. It's not as common out here, but there are a lot of mobile car washes out there. It's like so dry and dirty, it's just like there are dust storms all the time. And so like mobile car washes are a little more common. All the money I had saved up, it was about $2,000. I like went to zero, like emptied out my bank account and bought this trailer and the whole rig. And then I'm like, all right, I didn't even realize, like, I'm just assuming I'll pull it somehow. I didn't even like solve that yet. I got this rig and it's like, okay, now how are we going to tow it? Okay, we got to solve that. I have this Cadillac. Well, I went to U-Haul and they attached a hitch to the Cadillac. And this is like a two-door like Coupe de Ville, They attached a hitch to it. And the trailer was weighted to be towed by a truck, like, logically. And so the weight of the 1,000-gallon tank was on the front of the axle on the trailer to put most of the load on the truck. So I have this caddy with a hitch on it with the, front load of this trailer. And it instantly made the back of my caddy like this low rider. And so I pull into school and scrape over the speed bumps, with this trailer. It's like the back of this caddy is like a low rider. And then the front of this trailer is like dipping down into the ground. And I'm just like, man, this is how I'm going to like buy shoes and like, do the stuff I want to do. So yeah, that was what I was doing when I was 16.
I just have this video like of some like rap video gone wrong with like, girls in bikinis dancing on the front of that thing, while it's hopping up and down with the water in the back. If you had to pick one lesson from that experience, what would it be?
Just like freaking start and like go for it and just do it.
Just start. Start.
Just do it.
Just start. Stop getting ready to get ready. Just go.
Yes. Absolutely. What I see so often with people, it's like, yeah, but I read this book and this book said, I shouldn't trade hours for dollars. And it's like, yeah, that's a great principle. Like, don't do that. But if I'm if I'm doing cars, like that's hours for dollars. I'm like, yeah, that's a bad exchange. Like, but you're saying just do it or just start. Like, what if I start down the wrong path? And I'm like, there is no right path. The right path is like, you've got to go down the wrong path to get to the right path. So like, you are not going to like invent the perfect path by analyzing it in your office or at home for the next 3 years. And then, the path will be illuminated and you'll never exchange hours for dollars and you'll be in this like high leverage business. And like, that's a myth. That's just not going to happen. How you're going to get there is by like actually taking a lot of swings and being committed and just doing it. And then you realize like, as you're doing it, you're like, wow, I need to like stop trading hours for dollars. How do I grow from there and go into that? But it's, you don't just like step right into it. You know what I'm saying?
I know completely what you're saying. And this is such a good point because you can't outsource. You can't get super crafty with trading hours for dollars until you've taken a few swings yourself. You make sure that it's a good business. You understand what you're doing, et cetera. And I think people just jump into, let me have somebody else do it so I can, stay in my zone of genius. And all of that is important, but not always in the beginning stage, right?
Right. Exactly.
All right. So if we move on just a little bit, I want you to kind of tell me how you found yourself talking to a dentist and helping him grow his practice.
Yeah. So, all right. I met a guy on an airplane, and now it's a whole nother long story, but he invites me to this party and we go hang out and we're talking, and his college roommate is there, or his previous college roommate is there. And we get to talking, and he's a dentist now. And he's like, yeah, he's moving from Alabama or wherever to Nashville where I'm at. And he's like, yeah, I'm going to like be buying this practice and, doing all this stuff. And I just love talking about marketing. So I'm like, hey, what's your like marketing plan? And he's like, I don't, that's one thing on my list I need to figure out. And I'm like, well, there's this great book, super cost effective, like marketing strategies called Guerrilla Marketing. In fact, I've got a copy. And so I gave him a copy, and he's like, super grateful. And so I didn't think anything of it. I'm like, yeah, these are like, it's super practical guide to just like implement. So he's like, cool. A few weeks go by and I just like check in with him. I'm like, hey, how's it going, man? And he's like, good. I got the practice. I bought it. Like things were really moving. I'm like, awesome. What do you think of the book? And he's like, honestly, it hasn't left the front seat of my car since you gave it to me.
No.
So I'm like, yeah. So I'm like, okay, well, why don't you let me just do all that stuff for you? And he's like, seriously? And I'm like, yeah. And he says, he's like, I can't afford to pay you to do that. I'm just going to do it myself. He's just super, super scrappy guy. And I was like, no, listen, no strings attached. Like, I just want to, let me do it. Like, I'm learning all of this stuff anyway. I'm passionate about it. I have some free time. Let me do it for you. So he's like, cool. And then ultimately he's like, I feel bad. Let me at least do a teeth cleaning or something for you. But basically, it was just like a straight up, like just volunteered and was like, let me do all of this. And then as I started to like implement it for him, his practice went from, they were doing about between 20 and 50K a month in revenue. So it was a decent practice. And as I started implementing all of this, and it was really just very basic, like SEO, digital marketing, paid ads on Google, and I was just implementing all this stuff. And over the next 6 months, his practice he started tracking all of the new patient leads and everything that was coming in. And 80% of all of his new patients were coming from what I was doing for him. And it turned into, what it did for me was, it really gave me a little bit more swagger, where I was like, wow, like this stuff actually works. Like I actually saw it in a meaningful way, like really transform his business in a short amount of time.
How old were you?
This is when I was early 20s.
And how old are you now?
I'm 32.
All right, so you got 12 years ago, and there's a lot that's built into this. Number one, from what hits me is that you were willing to serve, right? You were willing to go out there and say, "Hey, look, I got a natural curiosity for guerrilla marketing, and I want to share it, and I'm happy to help you." And then you grow his practice, and he's like, "Can I clean your teeth?"
Yeah.
So, I mean, this is amazing. Now, you also casually mentioned SEO, just your basic SEO, digital marketing, and paid ads. 85% of the people listening are like, what the hell's that? I don't even know what that means. So, some of this stuff is very, very confusing for people. And I want to talk about that in a second. In 2013, you became the president of the company that you're working with. Can you tell us what Drake.com is and how you came to be involved with it?
Okay. So in 2009, 2010, I'm looking to move to Nashville, and I start reaching out to people. Like, my brother lives here. So I'm like, hey, introduce me to anyone you think, I should talk to. I'll talk to him. And he's like, I actually just met this guy recently named Josh Axe, Dr. Axe. He has this little website thing he's trying to get off the ground. I think you two would hit it off. So he introduces me. I talked to Josh, and Josh is a chiropractor, and really so he's running a successful chiropractic clinic here in Nashville at this time. But really his passion is nutrition and really helping people from a holistic perspective have a total health transformation. And so it's so much more than just chiropractic or just supplements or just nutrition. It's like total lifestyle approach to helping people have a health breakthrough. But he's doing it all through his clinic at the time. And so he and I talk and get on this phone call, and Josh just basically like shares the vision of kind of what he's up to in the clinic, but what he wants to build online, and kind of shares the mission of. And there is this really crazy story with his mom and how she had cancer when he was a kid and went kind of the traditional route, chemo, and her hair, fell out, and she was really just like, he just saw how painful that experience was when he was a kid. And then, the doctors announced her like cancer free. And so they were great, super excited. And then for the next 10, 15 years, as he was growing up, she was like really sicker than ever. And then the cancer came back when he was in school, and she calls him up, and, she's like sharing this news with him, and he's learning about all of these natural approaches. And he's like, Mom, we're going to do it all natural this time. Flies home, implements all of these lifestyle, nutritional strategies, and totally does a 180 on her kind of like her life, like what she's up to, her lifestyle. 3 months, they check in with the doctors, and they're like, we don't know what you're doing, but the tumors are shrinking. Keep it up. And another 6 months go by, same story. Tumors are shrinking. Keep it up. And then within a year, the cancer is in complete remission. And to this day, she's like in the best shape of her life. And so that's like to this day, 2019. And he's sharing the story in 2010 with me. And so I'm just like, I kind of get the picture of the vision that he painted and the mission. And he said, have you read The 4-Hour Workweek or this book called Crush It by Gary Vaynerchuk? And I hadn't read those. I'm like, no. He said, in those two books, they lay out kind of the model or the plan, of kind of how to do it online. That's kind of what I want to follow. And so I'm like, great, great phone call. I go read those books. I call him back the next week, and I'm like, hey, I read both the books. I love what you're up to, and I believe in it. And if I have to stack chairs to be a part of the mission, like, I'm in. And he's like, actually found this out recently, that he was basically like, he was like, great, yeah, call me when you get to town, kind of thing. Like actually not, he didn't really have a job opening available. He was just kind of like being nice. And so a month later, my wife and I pack up the U-Haul from Dallas and drive across the country to Nashville. And halfway over here, my wife is like, all right, so this is happening really fast. You do have a job offer, or you don't? I'm kind of confused here.
And you're like, yeah, me too, but I'm going to make one.
I'm like, me too. Technically there is no job offer, but I got a good feeling about this. Yeah, I'm just going to we're going to do it. And so, yeah, show up and call Josh. I'm like, I'm here. He's like, great, come over on Monday. Let's talk shop. Show up on Monday with my laptop, and we talk for about an hour or so. and he's still running the clinic full time, at this time. And so, he's got to go into the clinic and be the doctor. And so he's like, we talked for a little bit and he's like, great. Well, why don't you get started? Here's the Wi-Fi password. Good luck. And he leaves. And I'm like, literally, this is August 2010. I'm sitting in his kitchen at his kitchen table with my laptop in the empty house. And I'm like, okay. And in less than 2 weeks from then, I was literally stacking chairs. And I remember having the thought, like, this will make a good story someday, because that is exactly what happened. I said I would stack chairs, and here I am stacking chairs.
That is so crazy. Okay, so a couple of things. Number one, you probably don't know this, but I am a chiropractor as well. I graduated 25 years ago and I had a practice. I just retired this year.
Wow.
So I am well aware of what that stage of his life is like. The second thing that hit me is in 2013, he made you president of this little company that is not so little anymore. And you were directly responsible for $50 million a year in revenue. To what do you attribute that success to?
Yeah, I think I am wired to, I'm drawn to the 80-20, the Pareto principle, as I think a lot of entrepreneurs are, right? But I think I'm wired to look for the highest degree of leverage. And I was just cleaning out my bookshelf last week of all the books I've collected over the last few years. And it was almost like a visual of my career over the last 10 years with Dr. Axe, where it was early on, the books were, marketing tactics, SEO, Google paid advertising, pay-per-click, stuff like that. I was going to say Facebook ads, but this was before Facebook ads. And, but it's very tactical stuff. It's all the execution, the guides, very tactical and practical stuff. And then as we started growing, it was good, we're getting the marketing thing down a little bit. And kind of what I was saying earlier, that took 3 years of us not seeing any traction before we started to gain some of that traction. So I don't want that to be missed in my story. If someone is getting started now and they commit to 6 months or they commit for a year and they're like, it doesn't work. I was committed. It's no, 3 years, give it 3 years and of not stopping. You know what I mean? Don't quit after a year or 6 months and call that commitment. It took us 3 years of really not seeing any meaningful results before we were able to kind of get that flywheel spinning or kind of turn the corner, if you will. And so going back to my long answer to your question, early on, the leverage that I saw was me being a better tactician or using and leveraging the tools that are available. And then, so we started to get a little bit of momentum. And then I started to realize wow, we're good at marketing, but we're losing people or we can't sustain this. It's just kind of constant fires that are coming up. And so then I realized well, what do I need to do to change this? And so then it went from how to be a good technician or tactician to okay, now I need to hire some people. So then it became more about people, and very specific though, there's a great book called Who on hiring and a handful of others scaling up and implementing processes that help with the process side of the organization.
Just for context, as you're explaining the story, we haven't really talked about what the products actually are. What are you guys actually selling?
The two main things that we sell are information products and programs, so digital courses to take people through a transformation experience. So we have a course on healing the leaky gut. We have courses on detox, on essential oils. So we kind of have different price points and different topics, but that's one side of the business, and the other side is supplements. So our own branded supplements. Yeah.
Okay, keep going. Got it.
Yeah. And so going up the bookshelf, and as we're growing, it's tactical and we got to cover all facets of business. And then it's oh man, if we could create a culture where the environment is connected and they're all learning and there's process and there's not we're not solving the same problem again and again and again. And in fact, I'm not the one solving the problem. So how can I create a culture and empower the team to self-serve, to collaborate? Then it's the room is going to be, the people in the room are going to be exponentially smarter than just me being a better technician. that's, I think, what I've, over the course of my journey. And so it's like my bookshelf, it's like technician to like, tactical marketing to tactical business processes to leadership to like, how to like really lead, and then like self-discovery. and then it comes kind of like full circle to like, who am I being as an individual within the walls of the organization that creates that culture? That is probably the full life cycle of what I've learned, over the last 10 years.
I got to tell you, this guy, this Dr. Axe has got to be, getting on his knees every morning for having met Evan Tardy. I mean, like, there's no way that a chiropractic practice would be doing $50 million in revenue. Is he still practicing?
No, he's not. He sold that. So to kind of like bring it fully current, we got to 50 million and then just shy of 100 million. And then we actually sold a portion of the supplement side of the company and partnered with a private equity group called VMG. And they bought a minority stake for just a little bit over 100 million. That's where we are to current day 2019.
So when they buy $100 million, they funded you $100 million, or they bought $100 million? How does that work?
No, it was not a venture deal. It was private equity. So they bought a percentage of the company at that valuation, and their percentage was 103 million.
Amazing. And so then you get that funding to grow the business even more.
Exactly. We get the funding, and really with private equity, what I've found is the funding is certainly super important, because especially in a product-based business, cash growth sucks cash. But then so the funding is huge to continue to grow. But then it's also the playbook and the resources and the connections that the private equity company is also bringing to the table, and their leadership and experience. So that is a huge asset that they brought to us.
So what does that feel like when you guys get that cash in your account? I mean, like, you're in the kitchen, you're stacking tables, you're stacking chairs, whatever. And now here you are, and you're throwing, numbers around with private equity for 100 million. Like, what did that feel like when that cash hit your account?
It felt somewhat anticlimactic, really. Like, I mean, it was super exciting. It was kind of like we crossed a finish line of sorts, but really it was like, great. Well, what's next? And I think part of that, kind of like the self-discovery piece of it was, there were a lot of ups and downs all along the way, but it was like the cash hit the account, and it was great, and it was exciting and all of that. And it was like, great, now we can go have even bigger goals and like go hit those. But I think the biggest like value out of all of it that I've gotten is realizing, like, for so long early on, I was just all about the goals, all about the numbers, like, and as a like visionary operator, kind of entrepreneur, like, how I would set goals created so much stress. It's like, oh, we hit that goal. All right, here's how we set our new goal. Let's do it twice as fast and twice as big. Oh, we hit that one. All right, let's do the next one twice as fast and twice as big. And it's just kind of like, it was fun for a while, but then it became like this like all about the goals and number. And this is something I created for myself. And it's like, what I realized early on was that I got lost on like crushing the next goal, that I lost sense of like enjoying the journey. And so, there's a sense of relief in some ways where it's like, all right, we crossed the finish line, and now we have like really, really talented, experienced people on our team to kind of help take it to the next level. So that was a relief, but it was also like during a journey, or during a time in the journey for myself, where I was starting to realize, like, man, like I want to create for myself a way of being with my family, with my relationships, like inside the company, that is enjoying the journey. And I know it's like so cliche, or it's something that we hear all the time, but that was the biggest thing for me personally that I missed on the early days, is we were just like hustling like crazy. And it was like at the same window of time where the cash at the bank, and I'm having kind of this like new perspective on life, that it hit me at a time where I was like detached from it. You know what I'm saying? So it was.
I do. I don't know exactly what it feels like, because I've never had that much cash hit my account. But I can have an idea of what it might feel like based on how you described it. Are you guys, and whatever you're willing to share on this, are you guys like partners in this, or how does this work?
Yeah. So technically I was an employee number one, and then a shareholder of the company.
Okay. Got it. So he is the face of the brand, and you're sort of like behind the scenes.
Yeah, exactly. And I actually just came from a breakfast with a couple other entrepreneurs, and we're just talking about this topic, because there's a great book out there called The Synergist, and I highly recommend it. But, I would share my story with people, and, they come up afterwards, and either on stage or whatever, and they'd be like, that's really great, congratulations, like good job or whatever. But how do I find my number two person, like you were for Josh? And I've never really had a satisfactory answer, because I'm like, I don't know. Like, I'm kind of an entrepreneur. Like, Josh is a super visionary. I'm kind of like, a doer, and like I can take his vision and kind of go execute it. So we made a good pair. But I don't know what else to tell you until I read this book called Rocket Fuel. And Rocket Fuel is now like my go-to answer for so many visionaries and entrepreneurs who, especially like at the 1 million to 3 million in revenue point, and it might go up a little bit higher than that. But typically what I've found with visionary entrepreneurs is like, they're able to just like through sheer will and hustle, get the business to 1 million or maybe even 3 million by them handling or not handling all of the admin, the detail work, the project management, the follow through, all that stuff that typically drains a visionary. Like, they're able to just like muscle up and do it. But at a certain point, like the volume of customers or the volume of service or whatever it is, or the volume of team members, like the wheels start falling off. And usually that's when I'm talking to that entrepreneur. They're like kind of about to hit burnout. And I share kind of this what I learned from the book Rocket Fuel. And it's like the visionary needs an integrator. That's what this book calls it. And the integrator is it's what I was for Josh. Josh is the visionary, and visionaries, how they like produce work. It's like by talking and thinking. And so we'd fill up the whiteboard with all these brilliant ideas. And then the integrator is like, all right, great. Let's choose one idea and let's take that one all the way through the finish line. And so that match and that pairing, I think, is really, really important. And in the book, Rocket Fuel, he talks about Walt Disney as this genius creative. But Walt Disney essentially couldn't organize a children's birthday party, if his life depended on it. And what a lot of people don't know is that his brother Roy Disney was the operational brain behind the whole thing that made it work. But Roy's not really, well known. He's just like ran the company. And same thing with Henry Ford, and same thing, Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak in the early days. And so it's like this pairing that you don't usually hear about, because that's kind of the design of it. Like, the visionary is out there, they are the face of the brand, or they are the salesperson, and the integrator is what allows the visionary to be fully detached from like the day-to-day management and the details and the accountability and all of that stuff. Like, if the integrator can run all of that, the visionary is free to do like what their genius is, which is be visionary.
Really super interesting. You've never wanted to have your face on the cover, huh?
Part of me does. But, I think I'm just wired by like efficiency, getting results. And so I'm like, hey, if it's more effective for my face to be on the cover, great, I'll do that. But like, if we've got this talent inside the company who's genius at it, like, great, I'm going to get out of the way. And I think to go like, this is probably a shorter answer to your question from earlier. What's one of the things I learned from 0 to 100 million in revenue? It's honestly like, there's the law of the lid that John Maxwell talks about, that the organization, like as the leader of the organization, it cannot surpass like your leadership abilities. And what I found is like by me being a great marketer, by me being the best knower of HR and finance and operations and marketing and et cetera, and how it all comes together, like I am the lid. But if I can identify great people, recruit them, paint the vision, and get out of their way and make sure they're empowered and equipped to do what they need to do, like the lid is so much exponentially higher than who I am or where I am, right? And then I place a huge emphasis on culture, because that is that empowering and aligning people to the vision. And that's where the culture comes in, where it's like, how are decisions made? And some people will like hear about Google or Facebook culture, and they serve food and they have bean bags and all this, like, or massages, that they bring in, and all this like creative, interesting stuff. And they're like, yeah, that's not for me. Culture's the soft stuff. We need to make sales. And what gets missed in that is that culture, that might be a reflection of culture, but that is not culture. Like beanbags are not culture. Culture is how decisions get made, and what types of behaviors do we operate with inside the company? What do we prioritize? What are our values? And the leader of the organization who exhibits those and gets out of the way, like, man, watch out. That organization is going places.
It's amazing. You really are an integrator. But I got to tell you, at some point I'd be like, I came to you, I knocked on your door, I came in your kitchen, I built this thing, $100 million. Your face is all over the place. Where's my face? Why am I not on here? But that never hits you, huh?
No, not at all.
It's amazing. It's amazing. So you know what you're teaching me? You're teaching me that everybody needs a Tonto.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Isn't that what it was called? Tonto?
Yeah, exactly. Well, and like, that's the same thing for Josh. Like, he loves like being on camera, and he's great at teaching, and he's great at like, and there's some people, like, especially earlier on, like that would cause me a ton of anxiety, where I'm like, oh, getting on camera, I don't want to do that.
Got it.
Right. But I'm like,
you guys made one person together.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what the Rocket Fuel book talks about, where it's like, Rocket Fuel, and then a book called Traction, written by the same author. I totally recommend those two books to
I read
like
Traction.
Any entrepreneur. Yeah.
Traction is really, really good. But I got to tell you, don't buy Traction unless you really want to do the work, because that's a hands-on book. Like, you can't go to chapter 2 without, spending a month on chapter 1 implementing the exercises. So I love that. Well, I mean, I could talk to you for hours, but I want to get to the second half of the show. I have so many questions for you, but maybe we'll have to do a part 2. I want to move into the fulfillment part of your life. So, this portion of the show is more about things that you're doing outside of your business, which I think you're kind of like really looking into at this stage of your life even more. So, when you look at periods in your life where you felt like you're in the zone, however you would define that, what are some of the daily or weekly practices that you've spotted in terms of maybe pattern recognition when you look back at these sweet spots, when you've just really been performing well and feeling good? Are there any particular daily, weekly, morning habits or whatever comes to mind that you see as consistent that you've used that's really, really helped you in the area of fulfillment?
There's a handful of things. One very practical thing that's been useful for me is journaling. And there's a whole journey I've had with journaling. It's been like a really rocky relationship, journaling and I. And so as I started to do a little bit of digging, I'm like, all right, listen, I want to journal. Let me get real with myself. What's keeping me from journaling? And I just like kind of made a list of all the stuff that's like creating interference. And like, I want to conserve pages. That's dumb. I want to have a leather-bound book that my grandkids are going to read. Like, that's producing interference. And it's like, it needs to be perfect, or it needs to be epic. And that's producing interference. So I'm like, so it's like I'm operating by some weird rules that I didn't even create for myself, but I'm just operating by them. So I'm like, why don't I go to the other end of the extreme and just invent some totally new rules to go by? And so those new rules were, one, I bought 5 like cheap journals, $5-10 from Amazon. And I put them all on my desk, and I'm like, I'm going to fill up all 5 of these and throw them away. And so it was like those rules. And then the other thing was I would journal for a day or two and then I'd feel guilt about it. And so like some rule that said I had to journal every day or feel guilty. And so I was like, well, let me make up a new rule. So my new rule was I can journal one day, or I can skip one day, or I can skip an entire year. And all I have to do is write one word. That counts. And so like, if I write one word of journaling for an entire year, like good, I don't have to feel guilty. If I don't write one word of journaling for a whole year, then I give myself permission to feel guilty. And it's like, these rules are so bizarre that it just kind of like shook my cage, like rattled my cage a little bit and shook me out of it. And so then it was like, great, now I have an environment where I can actually be genuine with myself and write like what's going on. And so I started doing that. And it was like, when I came up with these rules, like I journaled consistently for almost a year. And this is great. And I have no like resistance with it now. It's like, if I do it, I do it. If I don't, like, great. And when I do sit down and journal, there's not any sort of like, there's nothing like chasing me, or there's none of this like my grandkids are going to read it. It's just, I just like empty what's in my head down on paper. And I found that like after the first page of just, free thought, just emptying my brain, so many great things have come out of it for myself. I'm like, what type of man do I want to be for my family? Like who am I as a husband? Like, what's my 25-year vision? What are my values? What are my principles? And all of this stuff, it just like came to me, and I clarified it and refined it over time. But it's like previously I would sit down and I'm like, what are my values? I'm going to do the work. You do the exercise. And it's like, I would have all this hidden resistance.
I love it. I wonder if you having gone to journalism, taking journalism classes, I wonder if you established some, preconceived rules, et cetera, that sort of boxed you into writing more prolifically, so that, the legacy, so that your journaling shows up in the Smithsonian, 20 years from now. So it's sort of precluded. There's you'd love this. There's something called the artist's way. Have you heard of this? Do you know what it is?
No. Mm-mm.
You're going to dig it. So you basically do exactly what you said. It's called Journaling for the Garbage Can. Martin Scorsese's wife taught a course for writers to help them get over writer's block. And I'll save you a 300-page book. Here's basically all you have to do. You have to write 3 full pages every single morning when you wake up. It's called the morning pages, spelled MOURN, morning pages, so that you get out all of the crazy stuff that's in your head, the stuff that's in your cache, the stuff that's in your RAM, that you dump out. Like you said, the first page is crazy. It's like, I'm fat, I'm skinny, I'm rich, I'm poor. Why do I do this? I don't know why this is happening. Like all the crazy stuff that's in your head, that gets out. And then the second page, you start having some revelations. And by the third page, when you're struggling to continue to write, you start getting revelations that come out that you would never otherwise get. And I do it probably 5 out of, maybe 4 out of 7 mornings a week. I have a 4-year-old, so it's not so easy. And then at the end of the month, I throw it into the garbage can and throw it away. Otherwise, it would look like Jeffrey Dahmer wrote it. It's crazy. All right, so different area of your life. If you could spend 1 month anywhere in the world, where would it be and why?
Honestly, the first thought that occurs to me is there's a lot behind this, but like I'm a 3 on the Enneagram. It's the achiever personality type. And it's like, this like go. We dig our way out of every single hole. Like, the way to like slow down is by like doubling the speed. Like, it's just this like insane, like go. And so part of it for me has been this journey in the last 2 or 3 years of kind of self-discovery in a lot of ways. Honestly, if you would have asked me that 3 years ago, I would have said Italy, Pacific Northwest, overlooking an epic ocean view, at the sunset with this like whatever. Like honestly, part of like the fulfillment piece, I would be exactly where I am. Not necessarily like here, like, but where I am like right now, like being where I am, like there's nowhere else to be. There's just like being here and living in what is. And that has been so hard for me to like, one, I didn't even know that existed. It's like, no. Life is always like, out there. Life is when I hit that goal. Life is a year away. Life is 5 years away. Or when I have that house or when I have that thing. or maybe if I just get better or more disciplined with fitness, or it's like life is always is there. And what I've realized, and this has produced like so much fulfillment, is just like living in the world of what is. And that to me has like changed so much of my life.
That's interesting. So you're not longing for a glass of Chianti overlooking the Amalfi Coast. For you, it's like wherever you are. If it's Nashville, it's Nashville. If it's Italy, it's Italy. But you want to be present, looking down at your feet and knowing where you are and being in the moment. Yeah?
Exactly.
Cool. If you could only go to one restaurant before you die, where would your last meal be?
Man, I am a big fan. There's this place near Knoxville called Blackberry Farms, and they have this whole like farm to table thing. Yeah. Oh, I would go there. They have all kinds of restaurants over there, but yeah, I'd go hang out at Blackberry for a week and just let them dish it up.
What's the one thing that's rocking your world now that has absolutely nothing to do with your work?
Great question. Rocking my world that has nothing to do with work.
This question is the hardest question for entrepreneurs to answer, by the way.
I can imagine that. I'm and
it is the reason why I do this podcast. Because entrepreneurs are really, really good at the first half of the show, and they're really, really, they struggle with this half.
Yes. To me, kind of, this might be cheating because it's an answer I already gave. But it's the what is answer. It's like, I've struggled like for so long to achieve the next goal. And like I said, how I would set goals is by making them faster and double. And then it's like creates all this anxiety for me because then I would immediately start looking around at like why I'm a failure. Like, maybe I hit that last goal, but I now have this big goal and someone else has already hit theirs. And, all this like crazy story running in my head. And just like this idea of just being where I'm at and like when I'm with my wife, like we're sitting and having a conversation, there's a couple levels for me that I've been at. One is like, yeah, I'm here and I'm really interested. And I'm trying to ask questions, but I'm still like kind of with the last task, or I'm still kind of thinking about where are we going for dinner, and I'm like there and I'm like, trying to like, be in the conversation, but I'm still kind of like just running on autopilot. Like where are we going for dinner? When are we doing the next thing? And then like another level, like earlier on, was just kind of like, I'm all in the past or all in the future about goals or like what 5 problems, have happened in the business in the last week or whatever, where I'm just like totally like asleep and we're having a conversation. And like what I've experienced in the last year is without changing anyone around me, but by me being present, by me being in the moment, like the richness of my relationships, the richness of like just my daily experience of life, just by being in the world of what is and not like what was or what the future is, just like what is. I don't know why it's clicked for me like it has, but it's changed everything. So now I'm like what's rocking my world is like crawling around on the floor with my 2-year-old, and like coming up with new creative ways to like make her laugh or to like, come up with a silly craft or something that, and 2 years ago, a year ago, I would come home and I'm like, living in what was or the future, or just like running on autopilot and just like, so many wheels spinning, and like try to have a conversation with my wife, and then I like try to muster up some energy to like play with my daughter before she goes to bed. And I'm like, but my brain was just like fried at the end of the day.
I absolutely love that. I want you to listen to something. Do you listen to Tony Robbins' podcast?
Yeah, I do.
Okay. If you have not heard his podcast this week, and I don't know when this show is coming out, it's called The Unflagging Faith of Nick Foles. And he interviewed an NFL star quarterback. And the quarterback, it's kind of it's from his one of his live events. So the audio quality isn't great, but it is exactly what you're talking about, to the point where he was in the Super Bowl and could not focus on throwing because he was thinking about things in the past and things in the future. He quit football and said, I cannot live my life like this anymore. I hate it. And he found a way to literally be right here in the moment and accepting what is. And that the entire hour is on exactly what you just described. You're going to freaking love it. You got to check it out.
I cannot wait. It's on my list. I'm ready for it.
Yeah, you're going to absolutely love it. Okay, a couple more questions.
Yeah.
What is the one thing that you've always wanted to learn, but you just haven't gotten around to yet?
I thought it was a second language, like Spanish, possibly Japanese. But what I'm realizing is I think it's an instrument. And an instrument is like something that haunts me. And I've like taken guitar lessons and never like broke through, to where I could actually play a song. I kind of like did a lot of kind of half starts. So I would say it would be guitar or piano.
Piano is amazing. It's tough as you get older to do piano. That's why we have to make sure. I have a 4-year-old and you have a 2-year-old. We want to make sure that we get them doing piano early because it is the basis for all music for sure. So let's make that commitment to each other. All right, let's hit the last part, which is the rapid fire round. Answer as quickly or as slowly as you would like. It's basically a first thing that comes to mind round. What would your friends say is one of your superpowers?
Someone called me the visionary whisperer recently.
Yeah. What's one of the things you're afraid of right now?
Heights freak me out. I have this total irrational fear. If I like sleep in a hotel room that's, like more than 10 stories high, I have to like do some mindfulness exercises before I go to bed because I have this like bizarre fear that I'm going to sleepwalk over the ledge.
Isn't it crazy how we all have these fears? I could care less if I was a million miles in the sky, but I'm claustrophobic. I'm can't get into an elevator, claustrophobic. It's like, where does this come from? It's crazy.
Yeah.
What keeps you up at night?
What wakes me up in the middle of the night is like my brain's just churning on ideas in like the future. What keeps me up at night is like wanting so bad for my daughter to have just this extraordinary life and to not spoil her, to give her enough challenge, but to be right there for her. And like what keeps me up at night is like, how can I be the absolute best father I can be? That's it's not like a stressing me at night, but it's just like my mind, it just won't stop on that.
I love that. That is so good. I'll tell you something funny. I heard Adam Carolla say on the podcast the other day. He said, I shoot for about a B plus as a dad. So the guy said, why? He said, I just don't want to shoot for the A plus. The expectation is too high. If I shoot for a B plus, then I never feel like I'm failing because I'm only shooting for B plus. And she'll be happy with me. I'll be happy with her. And it's good. I don't know why, but that gave me such solace where I didn't have to be perfect. And I was like, look, I'm only shooting for a B plus. We're going to be good. What book have you reread the most?
Principles by Ray Dalio. That's one I just use it and reference it and like re-pick it up. I don't read it cover to cover every time. And then 4-Hour Workweek, there's still so many golden nuggets in that book.
I know. That guy comes up every single show. I'm so sick of him. He's freaking amazing. I love him. Love him, love him, love him. Ray Dalio's book is really a fascinating book, and his culture at Bridgewater is interesting. They have a very, very high churn rate because they're so honest with each other that if I had a friend tell me they were in a meeting with one of the new hires, and Ray Dalio was there. And as the new hire is speaking, he screams out bullshit, and the person looks at has deer in the headlights, and that's the culture there. If you're saying anything that just seems like a lie or doesn't seem whatever, their people don't make it past the first 90 days. 80% of them are gone, but the ones who make it are perfect matches for their culture. So I thought you'd enjoy that.
Interesting. Yeah. Because he talks about like their culture of like radical transparency in the meritocracy. But yeah, he doesn't give that type of example in the book. So like I picture Ray as this like wise old sage, you know, is like a quiet. So to picture him like doing that, it's a little bit different visual than I have of him.
Yeah, no, he's not so. He's definitely wise, but he's not so quiet when he needs to be, and he probably is when he needs to be. You know.
Yeah.
What is your guilty pleasure?
Raspberry cream cheese croissants from Whole Foods. It's like, and then there's this like local chocolate milk, or this local dairy, and they make this thick chocolate milk, and it's like, oh.
What's the one thing that you should throw out, but you probably never will?
I'm assuming these are intentionally like broad, you know, so I can go anywhere with this, huh?
Yeah, it's just first thing that comes to your mind.
Yeah. Honestly, I think I'm like a book junkie, and like I just like buy books and keep buying them. And I think part of what's like kind of fueling that is a limiting belief that I'm still like, you know, wrestling with. It's like, I don't know enough, you know? And I'm a book junkie. And so I keep buying books, and I keep telling myself, I'm like, I'm just going to like reread the class, like the best of the best stuff that I've already, you know, bought, and that's been so valuable, but I haven't read it in 5 years. And I don't, and I like keep like reading more and more stuff. And so I probably will never like stop buying books, and my specifically books on business. It's just like, I'm a junkie.
It's an addiction. Okay, last question, and this is a little bit of a departure from the previous questions. We're going to change things up a little bit. What one question would you like to ask me?
Yeah, from your experience interviewing entrepreneurs, what is the best response or advice or wisdom that you've like picked up through curating all these like entrepreneurs and kind of the highlights of all of their experiences?
Can't answer it because it's contextual. It just depends upon what's going on in my life. Do you know what I mean? Like, for example, I found what you said today about being in the present moment as life-changing for me because I struggle with that. That is not easy for me to do. I mean, I do it all, right? I do the journaling in the morning. I follow it by meditation. I do another 20 minutes of reading. I do the best that I can to be in the moment. And I am constantly interrupting my pattern and not being in the moment. I find myself drifting off when I'm with my wife. I find myself detached when I'm with my daughter. And, you know, I just got to get myself back. And somehow in my brain, it's, you know, I've got this, you know, if I'm working on, you know, I don't know if it's like I'm trying to conquer Poland here or something, but I just have this, you know, this brain that is constantly trying to come up with what's next. So to answer your question, it's really contextual about what the person says in the interview that's specific to either me or something that I know that my listeners hear over and over again. And sometimes they're just random things, like random things. Like another one I did just before you, the guy said, you are not your successes. Your life is so much more than the goals that you've accomplished. And that's so true. I mean, it's like, you know, I look at this and go, you know, look at this guy. He made $100 million. Who am I? Like, I've never done anything like this. You know, he's created a company that, you know, is $100 million company. You're like, how did he do this? And so I battle that, I don't know what the word is. I don't want imposter syndrome or, lack of belief in myself when I hear things like that. So long answer to it, but that's how I would answer it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's brilliant. It's beautiful.
You know what, man? You are everything that I was promised. I feel like I don't have to return this. You really delivered. You did an amazing job today, and I'm super grateful. Do you have any final words, suggestions, or an ask for the people that are listening?
I would just say, like, my biggest ask for people listening is, like, if you're at all interested in this, like, topic of living in what is, like, not in the future, attachment in the future of what may come, or spun up about something in the past, like dig in, like stay in it. Like if it at all like piques your curiosity, or you're like, well, I've done it, or I don't know what he's talking about, or I don't really care. Like my ask is that you just like dig into that a little bit, because I think what I've experienced is just like the more I've dug in, the more I've kind of become aware of like the short story. My life has been on autopilot in so many ways, and I didn't even know that it was on autopilot. And it's like there's these things running me, and I wasn't running them; they were running me. And it was like this thing of don't look bad or look good was like running me. And I was asleep to it in the same way. I was driving home from work one day, like going down my same like work path, to the roundabout and down to the stoplight and all this. And it's the same path I do every day. And I remember having the thought, like I'm pulling out of the parking lot, driving home. And I remember having the thought, it's going to be like a quick turnaround when I get home. I need to I'll have to change my shoes. So I'm going to take off my shoes, and I need to talk to someone at work about a thing. So I picked up the phone and, called someone. In 5 minutes, I go to the roundabout and I turn and I get to the stoplight and I look up and I'm stopped, and I look over to my driver's seat, and my shoes are sitting there on my driver's seat. And I just have this it like smacked me in the face. And I was like, I'm not wearing shoes. How did that happen? And they're sitting next to me. And obviously I took off my shoes, like while I was driving, but I remember it just like, and I think a lot of us experience where you're driving and you look up and you're like, whoa, I don't even realize I've been like, how did I go the last 5 miles on the interstate? Like, how did I get here? And I had that with like driving plus like taking my shoes off. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is what I've been like in life. I've just been like running on this don't look bad or look good has been like running me. And I've just kind of been operating with it. So my ask is, if this at all, like it has been so transformative in my own personal experience of life and in my experience in others in a relationship with me, their experience of me, that like my ask is, if it is at all like piques your curiosity, like take a step further and like dig in and like do some work around this topic.
I love it. I love everything that you stand for. You really are walking the walk, and you're living a beautiful life. And your daughter is very, very lucky to have a dad who's so introspective. I've got a lot of years on you. I'm 52 years old, and I wish that I had the wisdom that you have, and frankly, the money that you have. At this stage of life. So, dude, it is absolutely a pleasure. Hopefully, we'll get a chance to meet each other in real life. But thank you so much for taking the time.
Thanks, Rob. It's been an absolute pleasure hanging out with you.
All right. Thanks for listening. If you love this episode and you know someone that needs some help in either stepping up their work hard game or their play hard game, it would mean the world to me if you shared this podcast with them to help me get this movement out there. So if you like what you heard, head on over to iTunes, take 30 seconds and leave me a 5-star review, and I will be forever grateful. So until the next episode, excuses are over. It's time to live.